1, 2,
Standing
go.
by. You know it.
Here we go.
Hey, everybody, you're listening to the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz,
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
and we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in. We're with you on this fine Thursday night. It's the opening of Blue Beetle. We'll probably be talking about that episode next week. We named this episode CBB versus Aggressively Misunderstanding Class Struggle. And I know Caleb has had some issues with it. One of our possible titles, which we got into late, though, was Rich Mutants North of Genosha. So, Caleb, anything you want to say about a popular song? Or
Yeah, so it has been, number one, this is truly on the cuff. I didn't know we were going to talk about this. So it has been an interesting time for fans of country music, right? So, a couple of weeks ago, we had Jason Aldean just being typical Jason Aldean and saying some dumb shit and putting out a song that was, problematic to say the least, for anybody who has just, a little bit of understanding or, understands what dog whistles are. Everybody kind of got what he was saying, and then he got mad because people got what he's saying. Anyway, but then the week after that, you have Tyler Childers, who I'm a big fan of. I became a fan of Tyler Childers through the grapevine of folks like Sturgill Simpson and White Buffalo and all of those other kind of alt country folks. Jason Isbell in there a little bit brought me to them. And so big fan of him. And he put out this really amazing, heartfelt love song. And the song itself, just kind of sexuality neutral, gender neutral, doesn't really say anything. But you watch the video, and it is a beautiful, beautiful love story about a gay couple who fall in love as young men, except one of them, is working in the coal mines and dies of the black lung very early. And then the other partner just, he lives his life missing his best friend and his lover. Right? It's very heartfelt. And then you have another popular song, which look, kudos to him. He became an overnight sensation. He's got a great voice. I won't knock it. But he put out a song, and the title is, I forget the guy's name off the top of my head, but the title is called Rich Men North of Richmond. And effectively, it's a song that purports to be about the class struggle. And it's talking about, basically, it ought to be talking about how, we have an issue with wealth distribution or the lack thereof. And, 1 or 25 people own as much of the wealth and have it soaked up as, 56, 58% of the country. Except then he just can't help himself. And he has to, despite the fact that he's got rich man in the title and it purports to be, just goes completely into Stupidville and just launches into a tirade, lyrical tirade about how everything is actually poor people's fault. And how dare these folks who are on government assistance and stuff have the audacity to, buy a fucking cracker, or a candy bar or chocolate rounds or whatever he says, which is something you hear right about. Oh, so-and-so's on welfare, but I saw them buying steak. Okay, it's their anniversary. They're having a steak. Like, poor people get to eat good food. I don't know how to explain that, how that's not causing the economy to be shit and the mass majority of America to be living under the poverty line. It's not their fault, right? They're just trying to do their best. I don't get it. Buddy fell off the stupid tree and hit every stick on the way down, until he face planted in the roots of it. Look, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So he was so close to having a critical thought, like to putting two and two, like to connect basic dots. But then, like I told a friend of mine, I guess he got distracted by the boot in his mouth and just decided that it was actually poor people's fault. That's the country music update from your local gay metalhead.
Yeah, and I think that's something with a lot of the music news. There's, like you said, the guy's name is Oliver Anthony, and he does have a beautiful voice, and there is something very, irrespective of the stupid politics, there's something very organic about this track.
There is. He became an overnight sensation.
And but it's been a situation, and it's not just reserved to country. I just think of Lizzo and the horrible stories about the treatment of her band members. I just think of that old clip from America's Top Model, with Tyra Banks yelling at that one model. We were rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. We've had those moments, just like a 1-2. So let's get into the comic talk, and we do have one bit of news. So here's the news.
We have one exciting bit of news.
We did want to mention that it was announced this week that Tom Brevoort, who for a very long time has been the editor of the Avengers house at Marvel, is moving over to X-Men. And I know he's kind of a divisive figure. There's people we know personally who know him personally that don't think too highly of him. But I do think from his editorial abilities, he's kept the Avengers on the front burner, and it has not been a front burner book for the entirety of its existence. And since New Avengers, which at this point is 16 years or something, when Bendis took over, it's been a marquee property. Movie helped, let's face it.
Right.
But that wasn't always the case at Marvel. There were times where the Avengers lineups were scraps, where the bigger characters, the editors of the books, would not allow them to be part of the main team as regular members. And, it affected the title, and since New Avengers, that hasn't been the case. And it also has been a very cohesive world. Stuff that happened in New Avengers directly affected Amazing Spider-Man. Stuff that happened in some of the other Avengers titles directly affected books like Thor and Captain America. So there was a pretty good unity, in a sense, from that particular editorial house. So I'm looking forward to what he's gonna. I don't envy the task he has ahead of him.
No, I think he faces an uphill battle because X fans look right now. It's kind of like the best example. I love her, and her work is amazing, but you don't want to be Ann Nocenti following Frank Miller on Daredevil. And I don't think you're going to make many X-Men fans happy right now unless your name is Jonathan Hickman, right? Because it doesn't matter what, like, I've seen so many people, this book, books that I've read, I'm like, nah, it's good. Like, what do you, like, this isn't what Hickman had in mind. This isn't the Hickman. It's like, Hickman's gone, dude. You're going to have to move on with it. Like, and so there's a lot of people who just are not going to be satisfied with anything unless it is just a carbon copy of what Hickman did or lined up with Hickman, because they loved it. For better or worse, they loved it, and they're not ready to see it go. And it's moving on. And so there's a lot of people who don't care. It could be the best book in the world. They're not gonna give it that credibility till later on.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting about like the whole, Hickman as architect that was setting up the entire Krakoa saga, an era of X-Men, it hasn't been that long. And if you look back at the different sort of like eras of X-Men, like when they were in the Outback, when they were in Utopia, when they were on Genosha, like these were not very long-lived eras for the X-Men, and people have their favorites. People are like, no, it was only the, adjectiveless X-Men, post Muir Island saga to, to Asteroid M, like that whole, that section, that's what I care about. Or it's the, the immediate era from the, when the original, or when, Giant Size X-Men came out and Chris Claremont started like this period of time is my X-Men. Yeah. This is going to be one of those. And these eras don't last a really long time. I mean, Chris Claremont is when you look at all the other writers and architects of X-Men, was kind of an oddball. I mean, he lasted for a very long time, but so many things happened during that time period. And you've had Bendis doing a whole mess of stuff with X-Men, and you've had Hickman doing a whole mess of stuff with X-Men. But really, that only kind of encompasses 3-4 years at a time before it moves on to something else. And this is that time, that's time. This Fall of X that they're doing now. I don't want to say it's completely changing everything as you know it, but it's kind of returning it to an interesting status quo of there's no super state, there's no immortality, there's none of this like stuff that we've been gifting the X-Men for the past 3 years. Now it's just kind of going back to they're fugitives. Everybody hates them except for the people they save, and there's somebody always out there that's trying to kill them with the government. And that's basically where they all were in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. So the more things change, the more things stay the same. But I mean, specifically, each little era is going to be somebody's favorite.
Yeah.
And Tom's going to come in, and whoever is the next architect or the next writer that they kind of latch onto to sort of grow a direction or grow sort of like an overarching plot.
Yeah.
That'll be somebody's favorite X-Men series, and before and after is going to be nothing to him, or just
for sure.
It wasn't good enough. But he's got a lot of work to do. I mean, I agree. With both.
Well, and we're also talking about it from an editorial standpoint, right? Like he's not writing the books, and so it's going to be neat to see what where his thumbprint shows up at, where it really shines through. I'm curious. I like him. To Bill's credit, what he did for Avengers was great. I mean, and I like my favorite Avengers run is that Avengers Volume 3, the Busiek stuff with George Perez on it. But that stuff was not, it's beautiful and brilliant to me. But there were times where just like, who's this person on the team? But that being said, to cap off his run, I really hate that a series that I found lackluster as all hell is what crowned or capped off his tenure on Avengers. That's unfortunate.
I'm kind of curious now because Tom's like you said, his fingerprints really, because he's not writing all this.
Yeah.
But what's really going to, sort of cement the direction that he's going in is who he hires to write. Yeah. Which books he puts out there, and we're not really going to know that until next year because what's being put out now and towards the end of the year is already, what was in place with Jordan T. White and the rest of the, the teams there. So
and what artists.
And what artists exactly? Like which artists is he going to highlight? Which writers is he going to highlight? Which ones are going to be the marquee books? Are we going to put a lot more focus on the main X-Men title? Or are we going to come back with an Uncanny X-Men? Is Uncanny X-Men going to come back? Are the New Mutants going to make a comeback?
Or will Peepers have his day?
Where's my dupe? Prestige format maxi series. I know he had one, but I want another one. Like, one of those.
I just want Jamie Madrox to get his due. That's all I want.
Every time that they come out with a multiple man book, I love it. I love it. I love it. It gets canned or it ends too soon. And I'm like,
favorites.
What'd you do?
Thanks, Peter David.
We have just had a comment here from our friend Wendy Freeman. Hello, Wendy.
Oh, dear.
More dupe.
Wendy got a beautiful slab book today.
I saw.
Yeah, she got a beautiful slab book.
Since Wendy piped up, can I share something fun?
Sure.
So due to like family stuff that's going on in our life, Roger and I weren't really going to take a big vacation this year. But Roger has a work conference that he has to go on in Chicago in October. So I moved some stuff around and I'm going to tag along and go to Chicago in October. We're going to spend a couple extra days on the weekend, but I get to go hang out with Wendy for a little bit. I've already messaged her, and so I'm going to get to give her a big hug. I'm really excited about that. It's been, Wendy, you can chime in. I think it's been 2-3 years since I've gotten to put my arms around you, and that is way too long, friend. I miss you. I love you. I cannot wait for October. Super excited about seeing you. And just what a badass. I love her.
Yeah.
I'll spiritually sending you a hug to give her as well, because it has been. Bill, how long has it been since
For you, I think it's been 5 years. For you, I think it's been 4 or 5 years. Yeah, I think sooner. Yeah.
Yes.
Comic 100%. Shop crawl, baby, says Wendy.
And the cool thing is Roger's doing his conference stuff during the day for like the first 4 days. So I've got 4 days where I just get to walk around Chicago, and I'm super excited. I love the idea of being a flaneur and walking around and seeing things, and so that's what I'm going to do.
Cool. So you're going to be wearing a big floppy hat, have a little walking cane, and wear tights. Is that?
That's not a flaneur, but Bill, thank you. That was the appropriate response. Bill did the head grab.
Well, my meme was always the Judge Judy with the.
Yeah. It's the eye roll. It's the eye roll.
And I'm just looking at the three of us over 3 years. I love my Bears. We love you too, Wendy. You're above all women. You're a Goldilocks.
Yes.
So
what is a flaneur? Now we're going to have Caleb define it.
So okay, so a flaneur is a literary concept. If you read novels where somebody is just walking and describing what they are seeing and describing the world and the environment around them, that person is a flaneur. Great example, if you read Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin, significant parts of the book, he's just walking down the street, pontificating, thinking thoughts, and then describing the streets of Paris around him. He is a flaneur. A lot of Southern literature, Southern Gothic literature is like that as well. So just walking and talking.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we should get moving with the comic book topic. Here's David Hazan. Hello.
Yeah,
hey, buddy.
Boys. Hello. But yeah, you were saying sorry.
Comics. Chiming in there.
Comics.
Yeah, so let's talk about comics. So, Steve, I have this big stack.
Jesus, yeah.
Still unread of Night Terrors. And I understand you read some of Night Terrors. So,
yes, I have been reading Night Terrors. And by the way, I am not yet caught up. These are all read. I've got 2 more weeks worth of Night Terrors that are, from last week, this week, and probably the following, because we're in August, and August is this month is a 5 Wednesday month. So there are Night Terrors books on every Wednesday. It's supposed to be concluding at the end of this month, but I mean, this is 2 weeks worth. Really.
For DC or Marvel, is there a 5th week event? I used to love those.
I used to love to, or they would come out with the annuals. The annuals
sometimes it's the annuals.
Very often it'd be the annuals, but I remember there was it was terrible, but it was fun. JLA with the question mark where everybody had amnesia and they didn't know if it was Justice League Aliens, Justice League Amazon. It was awful. Great art, terrible story, but I love that kind of stuff.
I mean, it's one of those things where I haven't seen that for a long time. Like a real 5th week.
Yeah. Do you know what the first one was? I believe Amalgam.
I could see that.
Amalgam.
Amalgam.
Amalgam. Yes. But I do have to say, and I'll put I've got a little montage-y thingy up here with different covers. So it pretty much, we talked about it a couple shows ago, with the sort of kickoff of Night Terrors, with the, Dawn to See, like the opening act, with a lot of the part 1s that were released in July. And then also Night Terrors, just the main event title book 1 and 2, and now 3 and 4. I think 3 is out already. 4 is coming out next week as we record this. Kind of fill in sort of the main story that's narrated by Deadman. So Deadman's basically the glue holding the central part of the event together. He's possessed Batman's body. He is, working to try and figure out, which one, get together with other heroes that are awake, because there are all the robots in the world, anybody who's an artificial intelligence. And we did have some surprises that anybody from Atlantis apparently is unaffected. As a surprise sort of last page reveal on one of the books. It might have been, I think it actually might have been Robin, the Night Terrors Robin book. But it's really interesting and intriguing what they're doing here, and of course they're really pushing the idea that this this character, this insomnia, has a history with the heroes, and we're finding bits and pieces out as we go. And actually, we do have a surprise. I'm not even gonna say guest. We have someone who has just joined us. It's Bryan.
Yes. Hey.
Hey, I heard y'all talk about comics.
Yeah. Oh, we have not seen you on the show for such a long time. I mean, we talk every day, but yay! So, how are your teeth feeling?
Oh, so for those, did you already set the stage here?
No, this was a surprise. We were leaving this as a surprise for everybody.
Amen. Awesome. So yes, I've been all over the world, and I'm back immediately from the dentist. So I had a tooth canal root. What do you call them? The crowns. They do the crown things.
Oh,
so,
the crowns. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's not so bad as a root canal. Jeez.
So
I'm royalty, baby. I'm royalty. But I'm back.
Oh, well, we're so happy that you're able to be here. This is awesome. All four of us. Yay. But we were just talking about DC's big event this summer, Night Terrors. I don't know if you've seen any of these or read any of these.
Nope.
Yeah. We kind of highlighted this is like basically 2 weeks worth of the Night Terrors tie-in books, with all these 2-issue miniseries plus the main series plus a couple corollary books. But I'm really enjoying it. It's basically a way for these writers to just go nuts. Some of the books have absolutely nothing to do specifically with what Insomnia is doing. Insomnia himself is looking for the Nightmare Stone, which is the, it's the Maltese Falcon here. It's the red herring. It's whatever, the thingamabob that he's looking for so he can have ultimate power. But in some of these books, and some of these tie-ins, there's really no insomnia. It's just the characters themselves. The writers are able to take these characters and go wild with like what's their biggest fear, what's the most horrible thing that can happen. Let's write a horror story. Let's write sort of a crazy what if, and just see how these characters react. And I think it's a fun exercise because all the main titles, all the regular monthly titles, are on pause. So most of those writers are now given the chance to kind of just stretch their legs, do what they want to do for a two issue spot. And so we have here, Green Lantern. Essentially, Hal is getting to relive his entire origin story, but dark and twisted and horrifying, where everything's going wrong. Abin Sur absorbs his soul or tries to absorb his soul. All of this is really terrible. And of course, there's a backup about Sinestro, where Sinestro himself is being seen as weak and powerless, and just a shadow of his former self, and he gets to confront himself that way. I think it's a pretty pretty interesting, pretty unique way that they can kind of go through these characters. Harley Quinn, this one barely is like, oh yeah, the Night Terrors is happening. Oh no, instead we're just going to deal with like the multiverse and multiversity and the whole Harley Quinn destroys the multiverse. We're just going to have fun and pop in there with that concept. She's in the bleed. She's she's getting to hop in and out of different Earths. She goes to Pirate Earth. She goes to Vampire Earth, where she's a hero, and she's like, wait, oh man, this is not what I want to do. But it's just getting to play with it. Just getting to play with it. There's nothing nightmarish about it. They kind of deal with that in the first 3 pages, and they're like, oh no, Harley's too crazy. She's already confronted all possible fears and terrors of her life. She's past it. She's just going to have fun in the multiverse for 2 issues. This one, I think, was really intriguing, and I really love this. And Bill, I'm not sure if you've read this one yet.
No, it's in my pile, brother. It's in my pile.
For Night Terrors Superman #1, of course, he was kind of in the air. He was airborne when everybody across the planet fell asleep. But in his nightmares, he essentially relives the history of Superman, or at least the history of the appearances of Superman and Lois and Jimmy and the Daily Planet. They get to basically show how the characters were designed over the decades, over the past 80 years. So you see Lois with the same sort of, with like a Betty Boop makeup and you know, like the 40s haircut, Jimmy with his, you know, oversized freckles and big bow tie, and Clark just like with the different styles of glasses throughout the years. And, you know, he just gets to go through these eras as he realizes that everything's kind of screwy and wild and crazy. But I'm really enjoying these little stories. Some of them do not interconnect at all. Some of them do sort of advance the overall plot within Night Terrors. The Flash, this is another one where it's just kind of a story that kind of takes place outside, and it presents Barry with the idea that, you know, he can't, just like a normal human, he's not fast enough, and horrible things happen. Wally West is, you know, speared by Gorilla Grodd and is dying, and Wally West tries to go back in time to fix it, and he's still not fast enough to do it. He goes back in time to the moment, and he can't reach him in time. And meanwhile, what he's not recognizing happening, but of course the reader is that everything around him is wrong. Nobody knows who Iris is. Nobody knows who, you know, Wally West is still a child, essentially, still a teenager. Green Lantern is still dead. Green Lantern was killed. He sacrificed himself, and he's just basically an animated will-based corpse, manning the watchtower, because nobody wants to see that on Earth. It's gross. You know, it's just all these things are wrong and twisted and strange, but his focus is so myopic. Just like in a dream, just like in any nightmare where you have this thing that has to get done. You're focused and you can't, everything else is just in the periphery, even no matter how wild and crazy and strange it is. But no matter how well you focus, you cannot reach your goal. You cannot achieve this goal. And that's, I think, is that kind of, you know, tension is done really well here. And I'm enjoying that story as well. I mean, there's so many.
I had heard very good things about the Zatanna.
Yes, the Zatanna one.
Yeah.
So this is one where she's, and I'll kind of close these. Zatanna, this one, she's actually awake. She was able to protect herself, and she calls on the only other protector that's in the area, which is Cliff, Robot Man. She doesn't like the Doom Patrol much. She thinks they're weird. She doesn't like them. She has some bad memories associated with them. But Cliff's there to try and help her out. And we all know how confident and, you know, and go-get-em attitude that Cliff has. Doesn't really mess very well with Zatanna, but they do try to make it work. They try to fight off the, you know, the night terrors themselves, which are these, you know, created sort of, you know, minions of insomnia. But, you know, really, really interesting story. I'm really loving it. And again, this ties in very directly to the overarching plot. So if you're just wanting to follow like what Night Terrors, what's happening in Night Terrors and Insomnia's, you know, whole thing, this one's a good one to go for. The Wonder Woman one is good to stick with, and the Superman ones as well.
Okay, cool.
Cover,
it's really good.
The cover I mean, number one, there wasn't a bad cover in the bunch that you just showed, but the cover of the Superman one was particularly good. I really enjoyed that. Almost has like a Tim Sale vibe, except if Tim Sale like believed in thick thighs saving lives. I thought that was, and I've noticed you said like the artist title on that was Riley. Is that Tom Riley?
I believe so.
Okay, yeah,
let me see
he is good. I have a Conan by him floating around
absolutely.
somewhere. He's a very good artist.
He's doing a lot of Night Terror stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this is what I was talking about, where you get to see the different designs of Superman through the ages. As he's dreaming, he's going through these eras. And you can see kind of, you know, how Lois is presented, how Jimmy shows up in all of his crazy, bizarre situations. So there's Bizarro Jimmy, there's Giant Jimmy, or whatever, and Lois is a witch. There's just, you know, here's where Lois is in her wedding dress. You know, it's all just very fun and playful at first. And then, of course, it goes way out there. And it gets extremely gory with basically the Superman as the personification of death, which is his ultimate fear, that he will be the last living human, or last living person, alive. And it would be because of him that everyone else is dead.
I just want to give credit where credit's due. I mean, their styles aren't. It's not a huge puddle jump, but the cover is by Gleb Melnikov.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's a great cover.
And then it is.
Riley does the interior art.
Definitely.
And there's some. I mean, look at that. Look at that.
It's stunning. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Dude,
gorgeous.
Dude is good. He got his big break a few years ago on an indie book, and for the life of me, I can't think of what the name of the book was. It was actually when we were all at C2E2 together. He had just gotten a start, and then literally as we were leaving C2E2, the writer of that book got basically Me Too'd, and I felt so bad for him. And because it was his big break, and he's such a talent, and it took him a while to like get back and get traction. So I'm glad to see him doing a ton of stuff now. It makes my heart happy.
Do you remember who the writer was?
I would have to look it up and tell you. I'd have to look up his CV.
Was it the Small Town book?
It's not the Border Town guy. No.
But that was around that time.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it was around the same time. Yeah.
Okay.
I would while we're talking, y'all. I'll talk amongst yourselves. I'll figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna.
This one, I did want to say, the Joker was hilarious. So
okay, good.
Go read the Joker.
And we did talk about the Joker at length last time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just want to stay on the DC route. Steve, I know you have a graphic, but I do have it handy here. So one thing that I am getting very excited about is the Blue Beetle film. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I went back to the prior Blue Beetle, Ted Kord. And the Action Heroes Archives Volume 2 is from the DC's Archive Edition lines. And this collects all of the later period Ditko stuff from Charlton Comics that involved what was known as their Action Heroes line. And as you can see there, you have Blue Beetle in the front, Captain Atom in what was a new costume for him, and the question began as a backup in Blue Beetle. And I had never read these stories in full. I've read issues here and there, particularly the Modern Comics reprints from 77 and 78, but I'd never read them all, even though I've had this for, God knows how long. So I read them today, and it's interesting how they set up Ted Kord as the new Blue Beetle with a tie to the prior Blue Beetle, Dan Garrett. Dan Garrett in this incarnation in Charlton, and again, Blue Beetle goes back to 1939 as a comic book character. This version of Dan Garrett was an archaeologist, and they knew each other in college. Ted and Dan knew each other in college. They go to a distant island called Pago Island. It comes up again. They just, for the first 6 issues, the first 6 stories, because it starts as a backup in Captain Atom, they just keep talking about Pago Island. At the time, they're like, thank God they finally got to Pago Island. It's that kind of buildup. And it's on Pago Island where Ted discovers that Dan is the Blue Beetle, but he discovers it in a sense too late because he dies in the struggle against the villain, who also happens to be Ted Kord's uncle. All right, now this is the Silver Age of comics. That's kind of involved there. It's not a lot of stories. There were 5 issues of Blue Beetle, and I think like 3 or 4 backups leading into it. There was an unpublished 6 issue that later appeared in an approved Charlton fanzine, which is included in here. So there's real rarities on top of everything. As you get later into the run, it's the most objectivist Ditko got, apart from the question. There's a crossover with the question, but it's really interesting. What they do is Vic Sage crosses over, but not as the question, as Vic Sage, and it makes perfect sense with that character. But you do see his origin, and there's some really wonderful things that they do there. There's microchip technology in 1967. It's like there was that thing about Ditko where he was very forward looking, and let's face it, whoever's credited as the writer, and I know there's not Steve Skates, but there's a couple of familiar Silver Age names, but it was Ditko driving the driving the car. Let's face that. There's some weird stuff in there. There's some sexist language that would not fly, but it's 56 years ago. Things have changed, thank God. But the art was great. The villains are super weird, like the Madman and the Destroyer of Heroes, the Masked Marauder. You don't get these names anymore. And it's just a sort of prequel to start getting me in the mood for what's to come next week or tonight, if I was wired that way. It was a nice opening act. I really enjoyed having that. And the questions next. That's awesome. Next. So with Caleb's story, and it's also important to note this is the only time these stories has been reprinted in full. There was a planned reprint called Beyond Watchmen, Blue Beetle in question, which would have reprinted this material minus the Captain Atom stuff, and for whatever reason it was canceled at the last minute. So this is one of the easier archive editions to find right now. So you probably can find it a used copy, for relatively cheap. But just to sample what Ditko was doing, and effectively after Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange, it's where he also, was, like I said, kind of in the driver's seat. There's some interesting stuff. And, I do have to check what Zach says about some of this stuff because I was not prepared for how fucking libertarian the later issues of Blue Beetle were. And it's interesting because it's the villains that are spouting that shit and not Ted Kord and company.
Interesting.
And it was also, this is the first time I saw some of Ted Kord's supporting cast. There was a police lieutenant who he was very close to, but was also suspected of the murder of Dan Garrett because Dan and Ted went off and only Ted came back. He has a secretary, Tracy, and she, there's always this thing in Silver Age comics where the secretary doesn't know. She knows right off the bat. Oh, you're Blue Beetle. Okay. That was a nice touch. That was stuff you didn't see all the time. So that's my second book, Action Heroes Archives Volume 2. If you can still find it, I think it's a worthwhile purchase.
So I have comments and questions. Hearkening back to our previous conversation, the book that Tom Riley was on, it was Astro Hustle, and Jai Nitz was the writer.
Oh, yeah.
My boy
Jai Nitz was a teacher.
Yeah,
and that's okay. Yeah,
my boy redeemed himself last year with when he drew the Thing for Walter Mosley, which was amazing. So, but Bill, you mentioned that this was the most objectivist character that you'd seen, maybe other than the Question. Do you think it was more objectivist than Mr. A, or have you read?
I'm talking about the Charlton stuff.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, I thought you were talking about Ditko's writings. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Sorry,
yeah, just talking about the Charlton stuff, and it was weird because the beginning of it is very conventional superhero stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's Ted Kord, becoming a hero. And there was so many things that followed up later. Like the Bug was like basically fully realized from the first appearance, his vehicle. But he also had tech where you couldn't take his mask off. And I never saw that. I thought that started with Batman. And I thought that was a very cool touch. But when you get to the later issues 4 and 5, there's just some weird stuff about the nature of a hero and who should be considered a hero. It gets weird. It gets weird.
Well, and it's interesting too. And I had a question because this one, it compiles some Question. It also compiles, Blue Beetle, but also Captain Atom. And if Ditko's writing Captain Atom, who is essentially the most powerful figure that could ever exist. He can destroy the world in a nuclear blast if he wanted to, or maybe later on in DC when he was kind of given all that power. What does an objectivist do with that?
I don't think he ever really got to it, and I think one of the reasons was that the writer of that, David Kaler, who I believe started with him in the very early appearances. He basically, like, the 60s hit and Captain Atom happened, and then he disappeared for a few years. And then when the Action Heroes line, he reappeared. I think David Kaller had a bigger role in scripting than the other stuff. And I think that's why you didn't get those particular arguments, and why of the three that Captain Atom was the most conventionally superhero-ish.
Yeah,
it's an interesting question, because it'd be fascinating to see what somebody with that particular worldview would do with that particular vehicle.
Yeah, because a lot of times, like when I've read Captain Atom's stuff, at least later in DC, he's either like very anti-war, anti-violence, anti-military, sometimes anti-government. It happens where like he feels exploited. That would be very interesting.
Yeah,
but
I also
we can't have Sticko now.
Because of his storyline, at least at the outset, he was also in that Captain America Man at a Time,
right?
Motif, because he was time displaced because the shit started happening in the 60s for him. Yeah. All right. Well, so that's one of the big two. Let's go over to the other big two. And there's no way we're going to have Bryan on without talking X-Men. And I've never been so happy for somebody to steal my choice of a book. Which was Astonishing Iceman #1, which we all have, except for Steve with his fancy variant cover. So
it's not. Is that? Oh, it is a variant cover. Oh, I thought this was the main
one.
one.
You got a variant cover, yeah.
Oh, it is variant edition.
So, Bryan, I'm so happy we get to hear X talk out of you. So, why don't you take us through Astonishing Iceman #1?
Whew. Thank you. I will admit I'm a little rusty at this, everyone. I have not read a comic, much less talked about one, and I don't even want to look back and see how long it's been. But yes, I did read this. Thanks to Bill for recommending this. And I really just read it because I wanted to talk about it and share it. So I'm glad we can, because I have opinions. I will be constructive, and then I may have my little, couple negative notes. So if you're not up to speed on Fall of X, obviously this book is probably not where you want to start. But I won't get into the Hellfire Gala too deep. I have a little bit of thoughts. I know y'all talked about it. But overall, that event has set the stage for where we are now, which is all the Fall of X books. And as with any event, this is an amazing chance to jump back in. It just lets the creators go with whatever interesting little takes on this premise, which is the mutants are scattered, presumed dead, Krakoa has fallen, yada, yada, yada. Right. So one of the things I was surprised to see on the list of books coming out after this was an Iceman book. Because, to be honest, Iceman is definitely one of those characters that I love. Goes back, from the beginning of the X-Men. Also famous from the television, was it Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, right? Everybody knows Iceman. But as a solo book, it's been a hit and miss kind of, situation. I think my favorite incarnation of Iceman was Tina Grace's take. What was it? Probably like 4 years ago, pre-pandemic, whatever that is. So anyway, it was surprising that they were doing this. But as they have established, I think it was before Bendis. It may have been even back to Morrison, but definitely in the Bendis era, they really ramped up Iceman's use of his power and sort of made him this Omega level mutant, which is, for those who don't track that kind of terminology, it's a very powerful, probably the most powerful class of mutants, right?
It's like an A-list bear.
Oh my god, the A-list bears. Oh, you're talking about another topic.
Oh my god,
the Omega 11 mutants get to all the cool
I
parties.
just absolutely love seeing the A-list bears getting shut out of Kylie Minogue today. It was so much fun. There was a popcorn gift moment. So let's go on.
A-list. Yeah. I was just at a gay campsite this weekend, and there were definitely some bears there who probably thought they were A-list bears, but whatever, it's fine. Not including our dear friend of the show, Zan Christensen, who was there, and he is an A-list bear, but in a better way. He is a good kind of A-list bear,
and we love him.
And we love him.
Yes,
and maybe lust after him slightly.
Yeah. Well, listen. Come to Seattle. No. So
maybe go pack my bag.
you know you have a standing invite, and I have a guest room. I'm just saying. But no, I could, yeah. So Iceman's great, a great character. I just was surprised, and Steve Orlando is an amazing writer. I think he has had moments in his career that the talent, unrestrained and sort of like unmediated, is there, like no question. But I do find, and this is the only little slight, that when he is given a kind of, and he does a lot of these. He's done DC work, he's done Marvel work. I don't always know that he gets that unmediated ability to shine. This book, I think he's doing everything he can, because the premise, I don't know how much the editorial gave him. I don't know how much he came up with. It's bold. It's interesting. I hope that it's from the creative side and not the editorial side. But, it's a new status quo, right? Not just for the world, but for Iceman. He has gone full on Kal-El with his own fortress of Icitude. I don't know, whatever which I love. I mean, I'm a Superman nerd through and through. Seeing Marvel take that and borrow that, and fine. That every Marvel, DC, all the companies share stuff, whatever, who cares? But after the events of Hellfire, we really didn't know what Iceman's status was. In fact, the book, the first issue that we're talking about, they kind of recap some of that, and they show like this critical scene where he gets like eviscerated by, I think it was Nimrod, and melted like from within. So it was pretty like definitive, except that
they pumped liquid napalm inside his cells.
Yeah,
Nimrod did, or Nimrod 4.7 or whatever it is.
Yeah, the most recent patch. Yeah, Nimrod, who I again always loved Nimrod, but so
good design. Yeah,
he's great design. Who do we know the history? Who did that first? Was that a Claremont?
I think it's got to be a Claremont.
Yeah. I want to find that out.
But it was really undefined under him.
Yeah, and just so good. Anyway, so Iceman we thought was gone. Well, no, because he has this empath in his life. This character who question, and this is I'm sorry, I have not read these books in a while. Where did Romeo come from? Is he from Cena Grace's run? Is he the guy that he kind of ended up with at the end?
No, he's an Inhuman.
No, he's an Inhuman. Yeah.
Okay. Is that something?
He made appearances in Inhumans versus X-Men.
Yeah.
I think, if I can remember.
That's ringing a bell. Okay.
Yeah.
I did read that, but been a while. Okay, so he's a guy. They're obviously together in some relationship, right? Is the relationship new, or has that been a thing that's established?
That's been happening.
Okay, so that's been there, and I did. So full disclosure, I basically stopped reading comics for like the last. Like I said, it's probably been a year. Honestly, I feel like it's been a long time, and that's not because I don't like comics. That's just because my life was crazy, so I had less time, and comics was a thing I could cut back on. And I have, so that's not entirely true. I have read judiciously like little bits and bobs as I find them. I have Geek Gets even this week. I came prepared, right? But I have picked up a random like indie stuff in here and there. And when you guys talk about something that sounds interesting, I'll like go check it out. But X books before Hellfire Gala, I don't even remember what was the last event before Hellfire Gala. This last one. Was it like the Sinister one?
I was going to say the Sins of Sinister, and then before that was 10 of Swords or X of Swords.
I did read 10 of Swords. I read the very beginning of, I think maybe the first couple. In Humans versus X-Men. Now I do remember I did read that, at least most of it, and I think I started Sins of Sinister, but I kept meaning to go back. Anyway, so that's to say I have been checked out. But this Hellfire Gala is such a big deal. Fall of X is such a big deal. I was very interested in how this would all culminate, and so that and talking about it with you guys has definitely brought me back. This issue, seeing what Iceman's coming back into, even if I have no context at all, I followed it. It was fine. It was cute. He's got this. So I guess Clyde is like his, like Superman's got like his Bizarro or his drones or his, like they're not extensions of him exactly.
But I think Clyde is more along the lines of an extension because he's visually very much the way Iceman originally appeared in X-Men 1.
I almost want to say
X-Man.
like that's like a snowman.
Clyde, that name, there's a thing there that's scratching in the back of my neurons, and I cannot think of what that's from. That might actually be something from something. So if you're watching this and you're yelling at your screens, or you're listening to us yelling at your speakers, whatever, let us know, because I always like, these are those things that I need like a secretary or a full-time assistant to sit there and like go do the. Where's ChatGPT? Honestly, if ChatGPT could just be my little onboard assistant for moments like this, I think I would welcome AI into my heart. But yeah, so Clyde's there and he's helping out, and Romeo's there, and they kind of explain magic of comics, how Iceman was reconstituted through the power of not love but empathy and things, and there's the whole sigil at the end with the ice thing. I like all of that was interesting, and I probably zoomed through it too fast to really appreciate it. But it's like I said, if this is all coming out of Steve, man, he is finding the good stuff to use with Iceman. I am interested in this. The art style, I was looking up this Italian artist Vincenzo Caratu. It almost sounds like that line from When the Earth Stood Still, right? It's like anyway, Caratu.
Platu Barata Nictu.
Thank you.
Nicto.
Interesting style. I don't have a good comparison. I don't know. Caleb, what would you compare this style to? You're good at that.
Yeah, so I was looking at this and trying to find comparators and stuff to really figure it out. It's hard to place. I mean, there's a little bit of this current, like there's hints of like Pepe Larraz in here. There's hints of some of these other, we've seen in the past a few other people broach it. There's also, I forget who the artist on the Midnighter book that Steve did. It's very similar to that in a sense as well. Who?
Yeah, a little bit.
Akko?
Yeah. So
not as bold as Akko. Akko's style
not nearly as stylized as Pepe Larraz is, or it's a far cry from. But I think it's still in that same wheelhouse. There's a few artists who have jumped on some of the X-related books that are very much trying to follow what Pepe did. Maybe Sean Isaacs. There's a little bit of Sean Isaacs kind of a reference in here, or it's pronounced Isaacs, but you may know it as Isaacsi. He's a South African artist who's been on several X books and did Avengers No Way Home. There's a little bit of that, but I think that's fair.
Yeah, no, that helps. Thank you. Like I said, I was having a hard time identifying. I will say the cartooning is really good. There were a couple paneling problems that I had where reading it and having that panel sequential art sort of standards in your head, you're like, wait, how did that line up? I don't remember one off the top of my head. I was flipping back through it, but early
Riley Rossmo, there's a little bit of that in there, especially with the way that he plays with I just lost my train of thought. The dots in the back. Why can't I think of words tonight?
The dots. Like
I don't think it's like Riley Rossmo at all.
I like no, not modern Riley, like early Riley Rossmo, like when he was doing Rasputin.
I'm not seeing that vibe at all. No.
So very early stuff.
I mean, facial expressions maybe a little bit. There's a little bit of exaggerated, like mouths open a little bit larger than normal, or eyes kind of an interesting.
I do like that.
See a little bit of that.
I really appreciate when an artist is keen on the acting of a character and they're not all just making kind of the same or open mouth. Like there is certainly some. Oh my God, there's this one guy. What's his name? He's the Orky. Is it Orky or Orcus? How do you guys say it?
Orcus. Yeah, that.
I would say Orky.
I forget who this guy is because he kind of looks like Dr. Fungus Head a little bit.
He's got that almost twirly mustache that goes to his beard. But there is a panel where I'm like, yes, Daddy could get that. As much as he's a bad guy.
Is that Agent Pequod?
Yes. Yeah.
Pequod. Oh no.
Pequod. Yeah.
Pequod. Yeah. And another note that I kind of like and to appreciate, and I'll have a little story to go with this. I always love a superhero that is wearing a harness, because in the queer community, and I would say in the bear and leather community and adjacent, harness is definitely a nice thing to wear, and you go out and it defines certain parts of your your chest if you're, wearing a no shirt or actually both. And seeing what is clearly a harness-like sort of embed in his ice for his chest is very appreciated as someone who knows such thing. I think, oh God, was it this one? Was there a Poppers reference in this?
Yeah, there was. Yes.
Okay.
There was, yeah. 100% a Poppers reference.
And I also live for that.
Yes.
It was because, that's right. It was the hero, the guy who took like what's it called?
Yeah, he's like, no, you take it and it gives you mutant powers for just a little bit. It's great for like a small time, or sex. And I'm like, Poppers. Poppers.
So much. I think Double Scorpion needs to come out with their own version of this. Anyway, love that though. So this is where again, and so for those who don't know, I almost called him Orlando Bloom. Oh my God. Steve Orlando is openly bisexual, and I believe currently has a boyfriend or whatever.
He's shacked up.
Yeah, he's shacked up. So no bi erasure, but he's a very queer individual. And so seeing little bits like that from the queer community, I always, again, from a queer writer, not to mention there's a little progress flag at the beginning and San Francisco, yada, yada, yada. So all of that is good. All of this is really good. The Orcus stuff is appreciated because it's kind of like
Sixus. I'm going to be calling it Orky from now on.
I don't know why.
Now I'm just thinking Orko from She-Ra and He-Man.
Oh my God! Right? Oh my God! So I like the mid-level manager. Red Skull is the joke. Fanboy guys like to say, but it's the bureaucratic nature of villainry. So the fact that Orcus has this sort of unit in Long Island, I think, because I forgot Iceman's from Long Island, and I guess they're going there. But like seeing their little bureaucracy and some of this nonsense and. Honestly, there really needs to be more bureaucracy in comics, to be quite honest, because as someone who works for a bureaucracy, I have so much material that I could write into a good story. Exactly. Right. So anyway, I love this. I think I will pick up the next issue. I'm hopeful that, again, Steve gets to tell a story. It obviously needs time to Fall of X. And that is kind of what it's interesting is I'm seeing and reading about other books. I haven't read any of the other Fall of X books really, but like, seeing how deep they dig into the mechanical, or the thing about the Fall of X versus just using it as like hey, we're off doing our own thing now again. Isn't that fun and exciting? And this book for tone, coming out of Fall of X or the Hellfire, the only thing I would say is a little discordant is like, it's not a downbeat book. It's a pretty swashbuckling action adventure. Let's move on kind of thing.
Yeah, it takes the very punchy, hard on the sleeve idea from like early Iceman, where he's always quippy, and it brings that back to life. And I thought that was really, really fun. It was a good tone to bring back to remind us. I mean, effectively, he's a power twink, right? Like that's like he's going to have the jokes. He's quick on his feet. He's lighthearted, and that's the kind of Iceman I love. And Brian, I really appreciate so. In our kind of circles and stuff, not everybody really enjoys Steve's work, and so and I think that's from a critical analysis, that's totally okay. But when I read books like Midnighter or his current run on Scarlet Witch, they really are amazing. And you're absolutely right. When he is when he hits really good. Now he's done some independent stuff where I forget what the book was called, but it was basically like a multiverse book where everybody was a president of
Commanders in Crisis.
Yeah, like Commanders in Crisis. He took risks with that, right? But that book didn't hit with me. I got it all because I wanted to support him, and I read it, and I was really hoping it would click. It just never did. But I like the fact that he does take risks, and editorially he will try things, and they don't always land. But I did appreciate the fact that he takes those chances and just tries to expand himself. So I read this first issue, and honestly, based on what I heard, I was not expecting good things. I loved it. I thought it was super fun. Like, it brought me back to like that again, teenage power twink. I have questions. I'm not completely sold that this is Iceman. I'm part of me sitting here wondering. So the whole part and parcel of the end of the book is that this empath, his boyfriend, who, by the way, Dennis Hopeless linked them up in what was it? It was one of the X-Men books that Dennis Hopeless wrote. All New X-Men number 12 or 13. That's where they linked up.
Okay.
And he first appearance was in the Spider-Woman book.
Oh, the
Anyway.
all new X-Men.
Okay. Right. That was like
New.
all new X-Men Volume 7, 16, number 3. But the whole like where you get to about the end of the book is that this empath that they have this connection that they were dating or whatever, his empathic abilities, like they linked up so simpatico that he was able to bring him back together after Nimrod destroyed him. Part of me is like, what if this isn't really Iceman? What if this is just an echo of who Iceman was? And this empath is like brought things in the world. It's actually because when he's away from the cave too long, apparently he just starts to disseminate. And he's too far away from him. So this could not even actually be Bobby, right? This could just be.
I didn't get that vibe at all.
It's an interesting idea.
I think that was one of the things that impressed me about the book is that this feels like Cena's Iceman.
It does.
It does.
In the best way.
Like there's a through line, and you don't always get that, particularly with the X-Books.
No.
That very much sometimes it's the writer's stamp, and in this particular instance, there was a continuity of character. Since I seem to have the mic now, I've not been complimentary of a lot of his work. I don't think he sticks to the landing well. This one, though, I enjoyed. I thought, especially coming out of the that was the Hellfire Gala of 2023. That even though there are these life and death situations right out of the gate with this book, there was a sense of fun. I love that he planted a kiss on that guy. I absolutely love that, and I think that was an indication that Steve has the tone. I really like the dialogue, and this is not to him. I don't know, like, how did Orcus automatically get this powerful? I mean, it's like, I know there's been some buildup, but it seems a bit much that they have satellite offices and, probably, like an internship program and,
I think it's a looking back. Cause like in Hoxpox, Orcus has that satellite that's floating around the sun or whatever that they try to get into. So I don't know that we've gotten quite there yet, but I think it is like a looking back. So they're going to get there. So let's start planting the seeds on building them up from this kind of grassroots thing to being this superpower thing. And and it makes sense too, because now that they have co-opted all of the Krakoan technology and the plants and their science and stuff, they're profiting from it. The Krakoa is no longer a thing. So like all of a sudden they've become billionaires overnight. Right. So I think that's where it comes from, but it's not explained.
And also, I have to say, and this is something I caught in Cena's run, and I think it is a trait of the character. He talks to himself a lot.
Yeah.
Bobby talks to himself a lot. I do that, like I do self-interviews all the time. And is that just an endearing quality that I have? Yeah, and there's Rob saying, yes, it's true. That seems to be like a very endearing quality. Like I said, this continuity of character, I'm happy to see things like that, because it's not something overt. It's not something you necessarily immediately associate with Bobby. Now I think you do with with the evolution of just how powerful he is, and just that. I will never call him a power twink. I'm sorry. But, just that evolution of, he's not exactly the type of personality that you would associate with a mega level powers. He's probably the most down to earth out of them, of the ones that we know about in the X world. So he's evolved into a very interesting character to me. And I did think Steve did stick to the landing in that it is a mini series. I think it holds out a lot of hope for me that he will through the next 4 issues. I think it's 5 issues that are 5 issues that are set for this.
I have one final thought on this. If we're all kind of winding down, I don't know, Steve, you may have some thoughts too, but he kissed that guy, but did he ask his consent? See, now
I was just gonna joke about that.
Oh, I'm not
saying
I'm not saying it like I am upset by this, but I am channeling the Gen Zer that takes up about this much of my brain sometimes, because I know some now, and I think we all do, I'm sure. But like, consent is a thing. So, just a saying, maybe
Yeah,
you
but
should have.
also, it's the other guy says, I know. And that's when he goes in.
So you think it's like kind
so
of
it may be the
implicit
other guy that
consent.
didn't seek the consent.
Look
Look at that panel closely.
But then, now. Yeah.
Bobby's immediate dialogue before that is definitely a come on. So,
yeah. No, I only bring it up because as a queer man and having conversations about consent at gay bars quite a lot. It takes up more than I'm sure in all of our circles, right? It was something I just clocked and I was like, But again, it's a trope. It's whatever. It's comics. I'm not gonna crucify and cancel Steve Orlando for that thing.
Consent was given between the panels.
Yeah.
Steve,
there you go. Do you have it but haven't read it yet? Is that what the?
No, I read it. I enjoyed it. And it's funny that you brought up the idea of talking to himself, because that's a trait that's shared by his cartoon co-star, Spider-Man. In all of Spider-Man books, he has been famous for spending pages upon pages of text talking with himself while he, sits and stares at the city or whatever. And I'm wondering if that's something that subconsciously or maybe consciously writers who have taken on Iceman, since the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends have started to incorporate that kind of personality trait with Iceman, because they, cartoon aside, these characters started out as young teenagers who had a lot of power and, were constantly kind of being, when compared to other heroes, were constantly kind of being relegated to like, oh, you're just a kid, you're just a kid, you're just a kid. And that kind of personality really, really plays well, I think, when you look at a Peter Parker versus Bobby.
Does Johnny Storm do some of that too? I haven't read enough.
Storm. Yeah, Johnny Storm does that too. It's a very much like teenage boy kind of attitude where it's like, I'm going to show off a lot. But then when you do have solo moments, there's a lot of talking.
It might not be restricted to that gender, though, because since you mentioned Amazing Friends, the appearances I've read of Firestar, she does a shit ton of that, too.
What was there was a book not too long ago. It might have actually been, I think it was like Spider-Man and the X-Men. It was that miniseries where Spider-Man for a period of time
became the teacher at the academy. Yeah.
And Firestar was another co-star of that book series and popped up. Or I might be kind of mixing it together with Amazing X-Men, because she was in that as well. But there was a lot of there was a lot of those moments where
maybe that's why they're amazing friends. Yeah,
they're amazing friends. They all kind of like do the same thing. They rubbed off, on each other. Anyway,
they rubbed. Okay, I just love that this is so influential now, because when we grew up, some of us grew up, I think, watching it. Whether it was we were a little older, a little younger, that is like the writers now who are kind of in that same age range are just it's something to them too, and to bring this back. Yeah,
it's a cool juxtaposition, right? Because this is comic books, and we constantly get villains monologuing and like the mustache twirler, and it really is a very cool literary tool to juxtapose a young hero who also does this kind of to borrow Bill's term, this self-interview with a villain who's all older mustache twirling villain who does the monologue thing. It's the same thing, it's just different people and a different vibe to it. So it's a really cool, I've never really thought about that, really cool literary trope.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Poor Caleb has been on the show for the whole time here and has not talked about a book. So he's sticking with the publisher, but not necessarily the same universe. So what do you have next? And I have opinions already.
Yeah,
and I'm just going to look away.
For a book I will never read, I have opinions.
So real quick, the book that I got caught up on, I've switched a little bit now. I'm catching up on the big stack of books. I've stepped away from reading omnibuses for a little while. I'm going and catching up. I ran through about 4 issues of the new Planet of the Apes book, which is a Marvel published property in conjunction with 20th Century Studios. I want to caveat this. I'm not the world's biggest Planet of the Apes fan. The only series as far as comics go that I've read is Planet of the Apes, The Human Wars, that Dark Horse did. And that very much was set, like if you've seen the films, the old films, Planet of the Apes, very much like apes battle, horses, warriors, that kind of thing after the fall. that already established like ape culture, right? And that was great. Marvel's doing something here. They are playing off of some of these the new remakes of Planet of the Apes, right? Like if you've seen the most recent movies, it's not actually like Planet of the Apes proper. It's what happened to get there, right? So what happened with the human race, and how did this happen? How did apes become so intelligent and become basically the apex species on the planet? And this is what this covers. I do want to caveat this: if you're a person who maybe has a little bit too much virus fatigue, because we all just lived through COVID and stuff, skip this book, because there's a lot of parallels. There's a lot of overlap. It's a lot. It's very COVID centric to the nth degree. Why did I pick this book up then? A lot of you probably are wondering. I picked this up because I am a huge fan of Dave Wachter. I love Dave Wachter's art. When he draws a book, chances are I'm going to grab it. I think it's phenomenal. Dave Wachter got me to read Godzilla. So that's that's a big thing. Also, this is written by David F. Walker, who I'm also a big fan of. Bitterroot is phenomenal. So these two teaming up, I was like, yes, give me this. I want it right now. So I picked this book up and kind of enjoyed it. Like, it's really fun. Long story short, right? Again, and this is about the beginning of it. Starts in 2011. There's a lab. It's called Genesis Laboratories. They develop this thing that's supposed to be like a cure for Alzheimer's, etc. ALZ, like 112 and 113. They're testing on monkeys, right? They're testing on apes. They're testing on these simians. Something happens. It morphs. It goes bad. It turns into a virus and starts killing people. When this happens, of course, the blowback, which is real because we've all seen it, the blowback from this is you have a very particular group of people, mostly right-leaning conspiratorial type people, who take it upon themselves and say, hey, no, this is the monkeypox or the monkey flu. They start going through and just annihilating all the apes that are in captivity, right? Like, they are breaking into zoos, they are murdering apes. The thing is, in real life, the scientists will tell you this is not just spread through monkeys. The virus, it started with apes, but now it's evolved, it's gone on. Killing these apes doesn't do anything, right? Like, in fact, the way to cure this might actually be found in the apes. And so you have the government who has started working with and trying to develop a cure for this virus. Again, this group of kind of, I don't know what you call them, fascists, short of, but it's very much people who have organized around the world. They're called the Exercitus Viri, and I'm very much looking down at my notes because I want to make sure I say this stuff right, which is the army of man, right? It's a translation to the army of man. And they are going after anything that they can find. Meanwhile, the United Nations has started working with scientists, and they have teamed up with there's this UN soldier named Julia Taban, and she has teamed up with a park ranger named Omatete to save apes. All right, they're gathering them all up. You start to see the initial forms of apes learning sign language. Throughout the series, you literally see a progression of the apes getting smaller, developing sentience, and starting to work together. By the fourth book, I think this is going to be a 5-issue series, maybe 6-issue series. They are on a cruise ship trying to get to North America somewhere to the government for protection. I think they're going towards the UN headquarters, to the only kind of laboratory left. Like, the other laboratories have been wiped out. The UN was not capable of getting the Exercitus Viri to back off, not capable of defending them. Very few places are safe for apes anymore, except for places that are really remote and have been cut off for the world, where humans and apes are now working together. So you see in the planet different pockets of ape culture developing. It's really neat, really cool. And by the end of at least the 4th series, the apes are on this cruise ship. The Exercitus Viri are attacking, and the apes have just had enough, and they start to take militant action. They strategize. They start fighting back, and the apes are now going to have to protect and save the humans. Kind of taking us from point A to point B on how the apes learned, and you start to see the progression of them becoming the dominant species on the planet. There's some really cool backups, again, written by David Walker, but it's drawn by Andy McDonald. It's Pug's Tale. Pug is a gorilla in France who was this kind of renowned and world famous gorilla who was in a circus, and he did all these cool things and everything. And throughout the story, it's talking about how, after the fall, Pug just becomes a thing of legend. And all of these stories can't be true because Pug is just a circus gorilla, right? Like he juggles stuff. In real life, Pug has become a warlord. Pug has launched a defensive in France with the orangutans, things that you see. It harkens back to what we see from those original movies and the pre-remakes. I guess the first iteration of the pre-makes. Pug's a badass, right? And Pug is basically launching the French underground. I forget what the term was. The French who fought back against the Nazis, who embedded themselves. That's basically what Pug is, and it's a really cool, very, very beautifully drawn by Andy McDonald story. Again, I'm not the world's biggest Planet of the Apes fan. I do think this is cool. I think the art is fun. It's very poignant at moments, very heartfelt at moments. You see great things like this. Also, there's a Judas Priest reference, so I was not going to pass that up. Super important moment to the story. But I'm enjoying it as somebody who's just kind of a casual observer of, hey, this thing exists. I find this to be a pleasurable experience. I personally would love to see more of that old school Dark Horse stuff. Like show me the world where the apes are leading. I want to see apes with samurai apes. I want to see, night apes. I want to see that kind of world too. But capitalizing off of the recent films, it makes sense. They are a company that does that. So not mad at what we are getting right now. It's something that I'm not upset about having gotten.
Okay.
Also, I think it's very important to showcase that one of the main soldiers is a woman of color, who is just an extreme badass. She's taken, she owns it. It's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Bill, destroy it.
I hate Planet of the Apes, but it's not Planet of the Apes' fault. When I was growing up, as a little kid, all we had in terms of current science fiction was fucking post-apocalyptic shit. Everything. Planet of the Apes. It's there in Silent Running. It's there in the Omega Men. It's there in Zardoz. Anything new had that element. Hell, we even had a Saturday morning TV show. A Saturday morning show that was post-apocalyptic in Arc 2. And even things like Soylent Green, this issue of man on the humanity on the brink, Logan's Run, even though there's a dystopian society, what surrounds it is post-apocalyptic, and it's bleak and it's not enjoyable, and I hate it, and there's too much of it, and even Commandy sucks. Okay, so it's not okay. Not for me. Okay. Okay.
The hottest of takes.
So thank God for Star Wars. Thank God for Star Wars for saving my little science fiction ass when I was 9 years old.
Plus, when you mentioned you didn't like Commandy, the switchboard lit up. No, I'm just kidding.
There's one person I know will not talk to me if he ever hears that.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
But yeah, it's just the way it is. I have read one Planet of the Apes series as an adult, and that was the Green Lantern Planet of the Apes crossover, because I wanted to see what they did, and it was inventive. This does have the selling point of Dave Wachter. If he can't do Man-Thing, this is an ideal property for him to be involved in. But for the reasons that I cited, I just don't go for post-apocalyptic. I don't go for extended science fiction where everyone smells like shit. Yeah. It's just not my thing. And it can be well done, I'm sure, but it's nothing I enjoy. And out of all of those, Planet of the Apes is probably the most enjoyable. It's probably the one that hits the most box office hit points, in terms of content. And if that's not doing it for me, it just won't happen. And a lot of that is the time that I grew up in, and there was too much of it, and it soured me for life.
I think David F. Walker's the right person to write this book too.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he really is. If you've read any of his stuff, he's bringing some of
I
that.
mean, I've certainly read all his
Yeah.
DC stuff. The one issue of Shaft I read, I really
Yeah.
enjoyed. He's a very good writer. He's a
He
very good
really
writer,
he really is. There's some
but
really
I would
poignant
not
moments.
subject myself to something that I won't enjoy. And again,
No, for
it's
sure.
not the property's fault. I like I said, I hate post-apocalyptic stuff more than I hate the individual properties. I mean, Soylent Green's a great film, but you don't have a great time watching it, and that's just where I stand with that particular type of motif.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and I think that's certainly fair, right? Like there's particular genres that I don't care for that I'm not gonna delve into. For people who did enjoy the last couple of remakes of the show, though, this is very much it's steeped in that world, and I think you'll enjoy it. It's political in nature, as good art should be. It reflects the world that we live in, and also advances it as good art does. It talks about our history as good art does. So all in all, like I found this to be, there's a lot to dig into here. And again, I think visually it's stunning. And then again, David F. Walker is absolutely the right person to talk about this book, because there are, again, if you've read his other work, there are things that I am not the appropriate person to speak on at all. But like, it deals a lot with race, and when you're dealing with a world where they are, you see in some of the pictures, these apes have collars. They are effectively, a certain sect of the humans want to enslave apes for their benefit to bring humans back up. Which is why I think it's also important that it showcases a young woman of color who's a soldier in this, who can speak on, hey, like, this happened to my people for a couple hundred years, maybe fucking don't. And so I really appreciate that he's bringing those moments in here. It's very steeped in our modern culture. So, like I said, I found it to be like surprisingly enjoyable, because it wasn't what I expected. So I'm on board with this. Where I haven't been with some other like virus based books, AWA is a good example of that. I just couldn't get on board with that. So
yeah, and if I can just provide some insight into my prejudices, the one property I think I come closest to legitimately enjoying that's in that bucket is Mad Max.
Okay.
Yeah, I think apart from the third film, they're all like exceptional. Mad Max, Road Warrior, and the Fury Road, I think, are all exceptional, and even Tina's movie has its moments.
I feel like Bill has got like a Robert Kirkman voodoo doll where he just like stabs it at night, where he's just apocalyptic bullshit, just murdering Robert Kirkman the doll.
Yeah, yeah. It's just not for me. It's not for me. I like, because that's like almost. I bet it's a nightmare of mine that I don't even recognize.
For sure,
I'm gonna die in a post-apocalyptic world, and not because of being shot or anything, like probably some like old-timey disease like consumption.
Died of the rickets.
Yeah,
the dropsy.
Yeah.
Got the dropsy. Oh.
All right. Well, I guess this is going to provide a window into the more independent books that we are going to talk about. So, Caleb, you actually have a book that I have not gotten caught up on yet.
Okay.
So, but the previous editions have been some of my favorites. I mean, just brilliant stuff like a Superman who comes from a Krypton where everyone's an asshole. I mean, this is such a wonderful series. So why don't you tell about Second Coming Trinity?
Yeah, I like this where it's back to back. This is fun. So yeah, Bill held it up for those of you who are listening to the podcast. But the next book I want to talk about is Second Coming, specifically Second Coming Trinity. I caught up on issues 1 through 4 of it. This is, of course, written by Mark Russell and drawn by Richard Pace. And because it's an Ahoy book, there are lots of little stuff in the back. You get a really great story from Mallory, written by Mallory, drawn by Matt Bors. There's all kinds of stuff in this. If you've read Second Coming, the premise of it is we live on a world where there is a superhero called Sunstar. Let me make sure I'm bad at that. Yeah, Sunstar. Sorry. There's a lot. He's a Superman analog, which is why I got confused. I was like, wait a minute, make me sure that's right. And basically he's everything we think Superman should be, and he's just doing superhero things. Except Jesus comes back because it's the second coming. And so now you have a Superman-like figure mixed in with Jesus, who's coming back to the world, trying to see what we've done with it in the 2,000 years since his crucifixion. We've gone through 3 volumes of this, right? So we saw that. We saw the second story, which was Second Coming. I forget the title off the top of my head.
Only Begotten Son.
Only Begotten Son. And then the third story is Trinity. And what's cool about Trinity is we actually get to meet God. We get to see God come back. And so Mark Russell is a theologian. He's a well-trained theologian, right? That's what his studies, his degrees are in. He's a very sharp and savvy individual. And so he has lots of really smart, important things to say. He's also an amazing satirist. And so I really like a lot of his work because he finds the nits to pick in our culture. And he just digs in, whether you've read Flintstones or some of his other work. Really, really great stuff. In the first books, we really were like, it is not necessarily satirizing religion, but there are lots of really cool political commentary, socio-political commentary on religion, the state of religion in our world. What would Jesus think if he came back? What would Jesus think about the evangelical movement, which has really co-opted and monetized him and got away from a lot of the things that Christ actually would have taught? In the second book, we see just an advancement of that. We get more of kind of what the world's like for this Superman figure in a world with Jesus. The third one, we meet God, right? And it's given to us in the context and the overview that Jesus is a member of Sunstar and his wife's family. Like, he effectively kind of lives with them and is besties with them. And he starts babysitting Sunstar's child. In the meantime, God has come back to Earth because he heard some things that was happening. He finally started paying attention. And also Jesus came back and was like, hey, bro, you might want to like pay attention. You made this whole thing, like pick up your toys. And so God shows up to kind of find out what's going on and see everything. Instead of being very much a socio-political commentary or a really hard look at religion in and of itself, what Trinity becomes is a statement and a dissection of fatherhood. And it's a dissection of fatherhood through the lens of a biblical standpoint, as of God the Father. What do these teachings, these Judeo-Christian teachings of that particular God teach us about fatherhood? How does it translate to the world? What does it mean for a figure like Sunstar, who is as close to being omniscient other than God, who comes into the world? What does that mean for him? And Sunstar has a kid in this story that Jesus babysits. And so now you've got two children of almighty figures, and one is in charge of the other, trying to figure out what it means and how to make this stuff make sense in this world. Really, really comical moments where Jesus is supposed to be babysitting the kid. The kid climbs out a window, falls out, and then starts flying. Wreaks a little bit of havoc. Cops get called, and Jesus is just down with him. It's like, no, it's cool. I got him. It's fine. We need to have a conversation. Very, very wonderful comedic timing. But the book is saying a lot, right? Like, it's saying a lot about the world that we live in, and it's a neat shift from his kind of dissertation or dissection of Judeo-Christian culture in the modern era. Right now, we're getting into more of the psychology of fatherhood, and it's neat seeing that applied to God, because God realizes that he might not have always been the best dad. And to be fair to God, God didn't have a role model. He invented the trope, so he was just kind of winging it. But it also looks at, God left the world alone for a long time and kind of abdicated his responsibilities to both his actual son and to the children of God, right? And so what does that mean? In the meantime, you have Sunstar also trying to figure out how to be a dad himself. He's married, again, Superman analog. So his wife is a renowned and very successful reporter. And he's been taking the baby to work with him. And by work, I mean like saving the day. So it's basically just Sunstar, Superman flying around with a kid in his pocket, doing stuff. Except lo and behold, they bust in and the wife is trying to get a story about Sunstar, and then realizes he's got like her baby on his hip, and is putting this kid in danger, although the kid's nigh indestructible. So it's like she's not happy. So it's a fun kind of breakdown of the Superman, the Clark and Lois trope, of comic tropes, superhero comics, fatherhood, Christianity, Judeo-Christianity, religion in and of itself. Mark Russell's a brilliant man. I love living in a world where he gets to write stories. And Ahoy has been a great vehicle for him to deliver some really fantastic stuff. And Brian, I think I know you're a big Mark Russell fan as well. So I'm not sure if you have read this yet, but I do think you'd find a lot of value in it.
Yeah.
Every time he posts, I think two things. I think, you live in Portland. If you ever are doing any kind of thing, I need to go down there because it's so close.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then on top of it, I need to read Second Coming because
you absolutely have to, Brian. So in your wheelhouse.
For those of you who have not followed this, or I don't even know who I am, which is definitely, I'm sure some people listening or hearing or watching this. I was raised very conservative Christian. I was a Southern Baptist for years and years and years, and it did me a profound disservice in one sense, but it also gave me a lot of ammunition to think about and have this in my mythology and have this in my head. So yes, I'm going to make a point because I'm actually about to go overseas again in about a month. So I will add this to the downloads that I always take with me. And I will try, by the time I am back in October, I will try to have read this so I can,
Brian, if you caught me here thumbing through the issue number 2 that I have here, and throughout all of the volumes, there are laugh out loud moments.
There are. Yep.
I mean, I'm just looking at this, Caleb, and seeing the hat that God has on when they go to the art museum, and just some of the dialogue is just, it's so laser sharp and so funny.
Well, and
was it the first volume where he went to the
Ark
Bible Land, amusement park, and they were like, "Oh, you're Jesus? Yeah, you need to come up here." And there's like all these other Jesuses that they've hired to do story time and all, and he's like, "Oh." So I love those.
I said a lot about Mark Russell, but it should not go left. It should not go left unmentioned that Richard Pace is doing a phenomenal job. Mm-hmm. I've always liked Richard Pace's art, and so when I picked up this original, like the first Second Coming, I was like, he's doing something different here. It's still Richard Pace, but there's some weird stuff.
Yeah, it's not the style.
No, it dawned on me. He has went back, and specifically for this book, he's gone back and studied children's Bibles, and he is emulating that kind of children's Bible stories. And I'm not just making that up, because when I realized it, I was doing Southern Fried Geekery at the time. And so I would tweet out and I would say these things. And on the podcast, I said, like, this really does feel like a children's Bible, like illustration. He tweeted me back, because he actually went and listened to it, and said, "Dude, you're the only person that said that so far, and you're absolutely right. I went and bought a stack of children's Bibles, and that's the visual style I was going for." He's phenomenal. He is so good. Like, he is like, you can look at this cover. I mean, everything that this man does, if you look at the interiors, it's just stunning work. Like, he is having a field day with this, and it's right in his wheelhouse too, because he's funny, he's snarky, he's cynical, and that cynicism comes through in the art. So
yeah,
Brian, like
the other artist that I would reference there too is there's a touch of Chaikin.
Yeah, very much so.
And when you bring out words like snarky and curmudgeon, who else do you think of?
Chaikin.
And it's a perfect marriage.
That is the best interview I've ever done in my life, when I got to interview Chaikin.
Yeah,
like that was
there is that touch of, I mean, you can even see it on that cover there.
Yeah.
That there's that touch of later period Chaikin, like the real abrasive stuff.
Yeah. The kaiju.
Yeah, and it's better for it. It's all the better for it. I've got it. I'm reading this tomorrow.
And honestly, like, I may not be the right person to talk about this, because we all know I'm not good at comedy. Like, I don't translate comedy very well. It's just part of one of my flaws and faults is I don't like comedy. I don't watch comedies. It's not my thing. But like Brian, my dad's a Church of Christ preacher, right? Like, so I was raised extremely, religious. And so this speaks to me in a lot of different languages and on a lot of different levels. So yeah, no, man, I hope you all read this and enjoy it.
And it's interesting, because I think for somebody like me that was raised Roman Catholic, I come from just a different entry point, but probably take away some of the same things.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's equal opportunity offense here. Even atheists get
Oh, yeah.
their dicks in a bit of a vice here. So I think just faith in general is here on kind of like on the chopping block, or how people treat faith more, I should say. So it's good. It is really good. And I've got to read this. Why I didn't in advance of this, I don't know, because I have 1 and 2.
Well, because you didn't know I was going to talk about it till last night, number one.
That's
but
true,
it's also worth bringing back. So you all go read it. We will reconverge, and we will have the council, and we will discuss this in further detail.
But Brian, you have 2 previous series before this, and it's so worth it. It's so worth it. Definitely.
I've got like a 12-hour flight to Japan that I think I have some time to read a few things. So yeah, I'm good. I will do it.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, you seem to have the mic. So why don't you tell us about a particular Kickstarter that you just received that I have?
Well, I know Steve's got the graphic. I'm going to just pull my physical copy. It's Pool Boys. Now, I know I'm not the only one that backed this. So I know, who else? Bill, I think you did for sure.
Steve, you tell me you didn't back this?
I think I missed it. I think I had thought that I'd set the reminder, and then I ended up not, and it was over before I could check it out.
I'll see what we can do. Maybe I can reach out, but because I've talked to Josh, I think, on Twitter before, and anyway, I'm sure they'll have copies, and you should seek this out in person, because I think that'd be even more fun. So Josh, I'm going to say his name wrong.
Trujillo.
Thank you. That made sense to me, but I didn't trust myself. And Josh, so the Joshes, Cornillo. Do we want to try that one? Cornillo?
Is that like Corleone?
No, it's not Corleone.
No, it's Cornillon or Cornilon.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway, they're great. They're fun. And what I love.
It's right there. Cornelian?
Cornillon?
Let's go.
Not going to work anymore. No, so it's the Kickstarter is great because not only, and I don't know which level I backed. I never remember because it's usually like forever after I backed it on a not a whim, but certainly on a night. Probably I was drinking, but like that's usually when I spend most of my money. Versus this is when I'm drinking, of course. You're on Amazon and you just, get that, sure. So Pool Boys, the comic, which I'll talk about. You gotta behind the scenes, pretty great. Actually love this because I just love process. They talk, they share their screenshots of their conversations on when they were just pitching it to each other and like collaborate. I love that. That's gold. Sketches, the what do you call the thumbnails, like whole process, really good. Definitely. I'll share this if you can't get that again. But wait, that's not all. Somewhere in here, I've had to reconfigure my desk.
R.I.P. Billy Mays.
What's that?
R.I.P. Billy Mays.
I got stickers. Ooh, the stickers are cute. Although the one I really want, which has escaped me, it's this poor little adorable pool boy who's the character you follow in the story. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to try to do this camera thing, but it's not like an instant zoom, so I can't do like the whole hand thing. But yeah, that's that ass though. Like delightful. Like this is the one I want to put on my water bottle, but I mixed company and all, I don't know. I'll have to see. Maybe on my like personal laptop or my other scandalous stickers but like they're cute. And the little chibi characters is the demon guy. You got postcards. You got this cute little like dress up doll thing, which I mean, like this isn't functional. I'm sure you could make it functional. I'm not cutting it up, but it's adorable, and I find a way to frame this, and that's just the swag you get, right? That's just one of the Kickstarter levels. Let's talk about the book. First of all, Josh. We'll just say Josh because it refers to both, but the artist Josh, like his art style is perfect. This is the style I love. It's got a kind of a Brandon Graham that is like, I have realized that is both very on the cartoony side, but also if you're a fan of curves, it's kind of the perfect for sexy. Like if you're more into the twinky kind of angular, or I don't know, muscular is kind of in between, but like then you probably won't like this style. But like if you're into the thick with 2 C's, or if you like the curves, I think most of us, have a thing or self-identify as being curvy. Josh, the artist, is his look, his style is that for sure, and you can tell on the cover. I don't need to show you. So the story. That's the art style. Love it. It's cute, really cute. And if you like that style, go check out Brandon Graham's work. We've talked about him on the show before. He did the Prophet remake. He's done some stuff recently. I just backed his latest Kickstarter.
Rain Like Hammers is the most recent thing he did, correct?
Yeah, that's the biggest, most recent published one he did, but he just did a Kickstarter for his new book.
I tried that. Rain Like Hammers wasn't for me, but I like Brandon Graham's stuff. Generally.
Yeah, and and I totally understand that because his style is interesting. What's funny about Brandon Graham is his art style. Like his art comes up on my TV in big screen when I play Fortnite, which, by the way, I play Fortnite, if you don't know, because I'm a 14-year-old child. But like he did a piece for them, and it's adorable and amazing, and it's like all this detail, and it's on my giant big screen, TV in my bedroom as we're playing Fortnite at night before we go to sleep. So I love when it comes up. It's like one of my favorite interstitial graphic things. Anyway, so like Brandon Graham, great style, sexy too. Also, his ladies, he's more towards that end, so he loves the ladies, but it's still very sexy. So this book, based on what I read in the behind the scenes, it's kind of like we want to pay homage to a Palm Springs or Palm Desert pool attendant who hooks up with a demon customer, and they have this kind of on again, off again sort of summer's escapade. And that's it. That's all you need. It's a quick read. There's not a lot there's a lot of depth. That doesn't sound right, but it's an easy summer read. It's light and fun. There's a little bit of drama. There's a little bit of, will they, won't they again, or something like, you got to read it. I don't want to spoil too much. But the thing that's interesting is I guess this did well enough, or at least they really wanted to do more, that there is a tease for a part 2. Cool. And it takes it in a completely different direction that also makes a lot of sense, and I think will be really fun. So, I'm not a big fan of the demons. Against the prior conversation about religion. However, given the mythological nature of that whatever, like it's fun. It's fun. They're cute. They're sexy. I'm into it. It's all good. And their little relationship, and the fact that some of these characters, like I said, have asked for days. It checks all the boxes. It hits all the boxes. So, Bill, I know you're getting this soon, I hope.
Yeah, I'm like one of the worst with following up with Kickstarters when they ask for addresses and everything. I'm terrible with it. There's been a lot of Kickstarters I should have my name in that I didn't end up in because I didn't reply in enough time. I'll have to check in with this, but since they only went out 15 days ago, I'm not that worried. And they did say, to check in with them after 3 weeks if you don't have it. So.
You definitely should follow up. And then, like I said, Steve and Caleb, like if you see them at the conventions, if I encounter any copies in the wild, I don't think these would really sell at a comic shop because they're kind of in that weird short story format that you don't usually sell that way. But
it's not even a full book format. It's short, smaller, as you showed.
Yeah, I definitely want this, so I need to figure out how to get it.
Yeah, and also check the Kickstarter, because sometimes that's how I got the Rift Track Swamp Thing. Is they still offer it afterwards, because 10-1 the print runs is more than what they put in for when the campaign was for. So
you got to catch them at a show itself. Or Backer Kit is another one I think sometimes you'll find them on.
Backer Kit usually will have them, and there is another storefront as well that I've seen them use. I can't remember the name, but a lot of comic books that have a second life.
Backer Kit actually is Kickstarter. Just like an affiliated company.
Okay. That's smart.
I think Don't want to put hands on Bible on that. All right, so we've been at this almost 2 hours, but we still have a few things to get through. So, Steve, you have another book. So it's like a Steve sandwich. He started with Night Terrors, and he's ending with whatever we're talking about. So, why don't you tell us about the other book that you chose to discuss tonight?
Well, first off, Dan Bryan just joined us. Dan Bryan, good evening, fellas. Sorry I got here late. Can you start over with everything? So, yes, Dan, we will. So I'm going to talk about Night Terrors, and we're going to go through book by book. No, I'm kidding. So what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to be really quick here. It's a beautiful book. A few years ago, actually probably at this point 6 years ago, I was really into a little book called Supreme Blue Rose. And most of the reason why I love that book was because of the art. The artist is little known artist named Tula Lotay, who doesn't do a lot of books on her own. But when she does, it's just every page is breathtaking. And so I'm talking about Barnstormers. I'll see if I could get a copy. Yeah, there we go. So the first issue came out in July. Absolutely gorgeous. Very simplistically, like the plot is a sort of vagabond barnstormer pilot who sort of makes his living half as a con artist, trying to, finagle money out of, rubes while he does these tricks with his biplane. It's the 20s, Prohibition. The Great War has been over for just not that many years, and so a lot of people sort of have that that PTSD that nobody really talked about or understood back then, like our hero. And in one of the towns where he thinks he's going to be making a big hit, he ends up breaking up what appears to be a wedding, and it is just absolutely crazy. He gets there. He's getting yelled at. It's in North Carolina, actually, where it happens. But while that happens, the bride essentially takes him hostage and has him take her away with him in the air. And just kicks off a whole bunch of craziness. Her fiance, former husband, is a wealthy landowner, is Southern gentleman, does not like to be denied what he wants, and so he has been tracking her and the Barnstormer Bix from where she ran away, and he's been using the help of a Pinkerton investigator who's no stranger to sort of kidnappings and industrial espionage and basically the whims of rich people. And so these two crazy kids are falling in love, and they're going from town to town, performing tricks, breaking into rich people's parties and stealing a whole bunch of shit and making money off of that. And, it's just such a wonderful jazz age fantasy story without the fantasy. Very much it could happen in a way, but the artwork, I think, is what to me really sells this book. I mean, it's Scott Snyder, so the writing is great, but Tula Lotay, her beautiful use of color, of composition, of these amazing character designs, they feel like they could just hop off the page, but they all have that sort of dreamlike sort of glow to them that just is gorgeous. And so many wonderful pages and panels in this book where you could just sit there, and I would want it as like blow it up and just hang it on the wall. Just beautiful story. And images here. I mean, this is one, she ends up becoming part of the barnstorming show, where she'll do tricks. She'll hang on the wing of the plane, and while he does loop-de-loops and whatever. And it's just such a fun, freeing book. And I know we talked about Rocketeer a couple shows ago.
I was
and that kind of aesthetic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That kind of aesthetic, the clothing, the fashion design, fashion choices, hairstyles, all of that really just in the hands of Tula look absolutely gorgeous. And there's a lot that happens. It's a wonderful sort of whirlwind romance story where you have these two kids making their way by their wits and seat of the pants, and then of course being pursued by a person who's up to no good and won't take no for an answer. It's a 3-part series, so this is I've read the first 2. The third part comes out in September. I can't wait, but I'm also kind of sad. This was originally an online web series. Forget exactly which platform.
Originals.
Comixology, that's right. So if you want to, you can go and read it on Comixology in total. But I absolutely recommend picking up the hard, the actual floppies. And I'm sure once it's collected,
I was holding off for the collection. Steve, I remember, and Brian, maybe you remember, like all of a sudden she came out of nowhere in 2014.
Yeah.
And I believe on the same episode, Matt was talking about bodies, and I was talking about Supreme. Was it Blue Rose or
Supreme
something?
Blue Rose?
Supreme Blue Rose. And the saddest thing about this, I mean, I'm happy that she's had this great career as a cover artist, but this is the first sequential art we've had since 2014 that hasn't been like a 1-issue fill-in or something.
Absolutely.
So I was holding off on the collection on this.
I recommend if you can read the whole thing in one sitting, it's great. It's a lot.
You mentioned Rocketeer. Thinking of one of our favorite guests. This does look a little bit like Athena Voltaire without the heroics. So it is definitely in my wheelhouse. And it's times like this I do wish we had Matt still around with us, because he had a way of talking about art that none of us really have the vocabulary for. I was really glad out of all of those other Snyderverse announcements that happened when they did announce Comixology originals, and in correlation with his Substack, that this was one of the books. And plus she also she's credited first, so I think a lot of that is, I believe she's credited as story and then Scott is script. I'm not sure. So
she is credited as a co-creator. So Snyder and Lotay did co-create.
I mean, that cover's just gorgeous, and it works on so many different levels.
Well, and this isn't even this particular cover. This is one of the variants for number 2. So this is not hers. However,
that's not her. Okay.
This is the cover for issue number 2.
Jesus.
And I mean, it's just absolutely.
Maybe I won't wait for it to be collected.
I look at this, and I pick it up in my box, and I'm like, I just want to get home and stare at it. I'm such a fanboy about this. Whatever. I am so happy to see a book of hers in print, new, just being there for me to pick up and read and flip through and just enjoy the art. I mean, even on the back.
Yeah, I've got the first 2 issues in my stack back there. Kind of like Bill, I'm waiting on it to stack up a little bit so I can binge read it. But I picked it up, and we've already mentioned it because I saw it in previews. I'm like, this is somehow it's both amazingly Dave Stevens and nothing like Dave Stevens at all. It's so weird because you look at that and it's like it's not the same, right? The line work is completely different. Tula has a much slimmer line. It doesn't have that really profound kind of comic look. It's a lot more effervescent, but it's so Dave Stevens. And so I was like, it's Tula Lotay, and I'm not the world's biggest Scott Snyder fan, and I was just like, let me grab this and let's see what it does. Yeah. I'm on board, so can't wait to read it. Glad it's got your stamp of approval.
100%. And it is only published. It's only going to be 3 issues, so you can read it now in its entirety, I believe, on Comixology digitally. And I think I want to say maybe it's like 5 or 6 parts. I think what they do is they now that they've published it in physical, they've basically taken 2 issues and put it into 1 issue each. But it is a 3-part in floppy form. Definitely pick it up. It is worth every penny.
Co-signed.
Okay. Just going back a little bit before we get to our Geek Gets, I just wanted to mention a Kickstarter that is certainly aligned with our interests. We're talking before about Pool Boys, which as a successful Kickstarter, well, there's another Kickstarter campaign that we hope will be. Looks like it's on. So, Steve, if you can show a graphic here. This is Power Bear number 3, and the gentleman that's writing and drawing this is Lucas Mosher. I know I'm butchering that name in my own particular Yankee way, but the campaign is active. There's 20 days to go, and Power Bear is a comic about tolerance and the fight for mental health. It also has a lot of action and a lot of cute bears. So the star there, Max, he has telepathic abilities and telekinesis, and in his guise as Power Bear, he tries to save the world from destruction. And this is not an easy task since dangerous aliens stand in his way. Power Bear has been published in Germany regularly since 2021, and I think other areas of Europe. And during this time, many readers have been looking forward to the 3rd issue, and the Kickstarter recently started, and I'm trying to read some additional information here. There's going to be additional artists, looks like mostly European names, that will be providing variant covers, which almost certainly will be up our wheelhouse. So there will be a link when we release the audio version to the Kickstarter itself. But if you want to go to Kickstarter and just search under Power Bear 3, this will come right up.
It's got a little bit of an Ed Loose vibe to it, just a slight Ed Loose vibe.
Yep. So Lucas, we really hope you have a very successful campaign. I've already backed it. So just putting that out there because it sounds like something that's like right in the wheelhouse of our audience. So
and it looks like I think we're in the clear here, or he's in the clear here. It looks like they have more than doubled what their goal was already. So
great!
With 20 days left to go, I mean they're already
just see that 218%. Yep.
Yeah, which is great. And also speaking of other, Kickstarters, people that we know with Kickstarters, Evie and the Helsings number 2 is going to be by Steve Bryant and his collaborator as well with that, is just, I think, 2 or 3 days in. And I believe is 90% funded as of now, maybe even 100% funded. So, definitely check that out if you like Steve Bryant stuff. Or have read the first Evie the Helsings and are waiting for number 2.
Okay, let's go on to Geek Gets. And Steve, I think you actually have one this time.
I have a little one, and
that's what
I've been collecting a lot of these. I've been trying to collect all of the Marvel's Happy Meal toys, and unfortunately, I keep getting foiled. I go to different McDonald's, and I have only gotten 3 distinct characters. So this one is, I believe it's Zarden or Darzen.
It's the Kree chick.
Yeah, she's the Kree. She is the she's the antagonist for the film. So she is going to be one of the major characters. Zawe Ashton plays her in the film. But I also ended up getting 2 more Goose and yet another Princess Carol, and now they're out of McDonald's.
Yeah, now it's Nerf.
I won't be able to. I won't be able to get. I was really hoping for Miss Marvel. I was really hoping for my brain for the other Captain Marvel. So oh well.
I also love how you don't recognize that you do have Gets. You have an Amazing Spider-Man number 300 poster behind you.
Oh no! I always get these posters free from my LCS, and
that's a geek get, Steve.
That's a geek get.
I get a stack of them. I do get a stack every time.
You have a stack of geek gets.
Humble brag, will you? Jeez.
Yeah, right.
Oh, I get a stack.
I get a stack of posters from Marvel every time, and I don't read most of these books, but they look pretty. So.
Bryan, do you have anything you can show off as a geek?
Yeah, I actually do. I'm kind of amazed, but it's because I've had about a year to collect them. So let me start with the stuff that's most recent, and then I'll work backwards. I don't have a lot to. I'm not going crazy. But I went to Fantagraphics here in Seattle. They have a little storefront down in Georgetown, which is an amazing little area that I love. And they had these cool little books. They had Haha Very Funny. Oops, there we go. Little comic zine. And Florida Man. And of course, a Florida Man is not going to turn down a dumb comic about Florida Man. Of the two, I think they're both cute in their own ways. They're very much kind of indie, silly, very, sketchy style, whatever. I think Florida Man wins, not just because it's near and dear to my heart, but because it's got like not only a cohesive story. I mean, cohesive is probably for a very short little, but it's zany enough that I love this. This is my recommendation. Bad Publisher Books, and also Florida, not quite with a rainbow, not as queer as I would hope. But when I was in Korea, this is back in March. I wasn't kidding about being all over the world, right? I got stuff for you all that I have not sent yet because I am behind on everything in my life. I'm sure I'm not the only one, and so it's no excuse, but So I thought I would use this as a chance to spoil, and I got a couple things for you, so I'm not spoiling everything. But these are cute, and I just have to show you because I've been wanting to show this. So this was in a Korean 7-Eleven, because 7-Elevens are big in Japan and Korea, right? And they are little keychains that are from DC. And I don't know if these are specific to that country. I mean, there's Korean on the front, so they kind of are. But I don't know if you've seen these in the wild. That's just a US variant. So each of you is getting one. I have to decide now who gets what. But there are little keychains, and I'm not going to open them. That's something I think you need to do yourself. And I didn't get myself one. Honestly, I was trying to this was towards the end of the trip. So I was I'm traveling as light as I can. Right. Cause I had a metric ton of stuff. Right. But they're cute. They're cute little keychain, charmy little things. And they were DC. And I was like, well, I've got to, and to tell the audience something that I know we've only really kept, I don't think we ever talked about the show. I always go to the bases there. I go to the military bases in Japan, because is where I work for the Navy. And they always have a comic book section in the Navy Exchange. And I've sent pictures because I'm always looking at it do they have some U.S. Forces specific comic that they only release to the U.S. Forces? Because I think y'all would dig that, right? Even if it's a reprint. I've never found that, but I always see these coloring books with very modern covers. And I usually send pictures to our little Facebook chat. But yeah, I'm always looking for stuff like zany US, but comic book translated through the lens of another country is just golden. If you ever have a chance when you go overseas and you go to a comic store, you go to a store that has geeky merch, just check that out and you will be tickled or you will be disappointed. It could go either way, honestly. But that's always in my thing when I'm looking for Geek Gets. And then I will be going back in next month. So yeah, I will have yet another opportunity to find more.
Very cool. Nice. That's very cool, Bryan.
I'm excited, man.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
Oh, just wait till you see what else you're getting, which I can't show on TV anyway. It's a little explicit.
All right.
Yes.
Over to Caleb. Why don't you show us what Geek Gets you got?
All right, I got a couple things. I'll go fast. Number one, I'm a power bear backer, which you put those three words together, it can mean a lot of things. Number two, vinyl. The soundtrack to Beaches by Bette Midler. Found it, own it, no regrets. None whatsoever.
So gay. I love it.
Yes. I was just
if you ever doubted a man's gayness, there it is.
To be fair, my husband found that and he was like, "This is coming home with us." I was like, "Yes." Number three, I got new workout shoes from the same company that I got my last company. They are called No Bulls, but they are there you go. See the little branding.
Nice.
If they are from their Pride collection, and as part of this, they released them and they give money to groups. I forget which one off the top of my head this went to, but last year the ones I bought went to the Trevor Project, right? So Noble as a company does some really cool stuff with Pride, and look how cute they are. Look.
Very pretty.
And then last but not least, something that I can never take off, and I think, Steve, you have a graphic to accompany this here in a minute.
I do have a graphic.
If you will zoom in on just me for a second, I've told you guys, if you heard me talk about this, I'm a huge fan of the series Heartstoppers by Alice Oseman, which has also become a really, really cool and renowned and very successful television show on Netflix. My husband and I love this. We've literally watched the first season at least 20 times. We're on our 4th or 5th rewatch of the second season already. I now have Nick and Charlie on my leg. I went and got a Heartstoppers tattoo. And what's cool is it's my first comic book tattoo. So eventually this entire leg is going to be comic book related stuff, but was going to start it off with a story that, like, my husband and I see a lot of ourselves in. Obviously representation matters. Love these characters. So yeah, now I have this really cute thing, and it's a panel from the comic. So Steve, if you'll throw that up, like I took it forward side by side. It's where it comes from. So really cool tattoo artist, same guy who did the tattoo that the homage to my grandmother that I had. So I'm a repeat customer. So I love it. I'm glad to have it on me. Can't wait to add some more stuff around it.
That's such a cool idea,
Awesome.
Caleb. I'm so jealous. I don't have a tattoo. I have no tattoos, but I think you've just given me quite an idea for maybe a tattoo. So thank you.
I encourage it. It's addictive. Like immediately, like as soon as the needle hits your skin, I start thinking about like 14 other tattoos I got to get.
Well, I like the idea of the leg too, because I got a lot of meat on the leg, so I've got space for them to put lots of comic panels if I could.
Yeah, now it's just got to figure out which comic panel I want to go next. Actually, and believe it or not, there's a Frank Miller panel from Sin City that I kind of want to accompany, because it's going to be mostly black and white. So we'll see. I'm a fan of tattoos. I don't know if we've talked about that.
We could never
No idea. Yeah, it's
no
surprising
idea.
us.
Like tattoos, hates please.
Yeah. I got a sleeveless shirt. I think I'm going to wear it next time. Which would be nice if I still have this tan. So I got a new sleeveless shirt.
Yes.
Maybe I will wear that. And
I want to see it.
Temporary member of Team Sleeveless with you and Arnie. All right, so I'm going to go over to myself for my Geek Gets. And like I said, I get like stupid, giddy, like childish when there's a new DC movie out and there's product out. So I've been collecting some of the Blue Beetle toys. So Spin Master has a few figures, and this is just something I really like to see, because there is a move in a lot of mass market toys to stop using plastics as as throwaway material. So as you'll see here, it's almost like a cover mounted situation where the figure is against the packaging, and there's no plastic, see through the window. So this is battle mode Blue Beetle. There's another version, I think it's hero mode. So that's from Spin Master. Got me some Funko Pops. I got me the Blue Beetle glow in the dark. That's a Tower exclusive. There's a lot of different ones. There's some that are only available through the Funko website. I think there's about like 6 different Blue Beetle ones, but this is the one I got. And I also got Conrad Carapax, which I assume is going to be the villain of the piece. And there also is a Spin Master Carapax, but I haven't found that yet. And then also there's a connection with Steve here. The Page Punchers series that McFarlane put out of the small figures with the comic books, there is a Blue Beetle one. And this confused the hell out of me when Steve and I saw this around the time of Heroes, because it's a 1 figure wave. This is the only figure in the wave, released in conjunction with the movie. So I imagine we'll be talking about it on our next episode, because I think we, probably will have the opportunity to have seen it by then. I still got to see Barbie.
Going tomorrow to see it. Bill is a 1 figure wave, kind of like a class of one, and from the legal perspective.
Yeah, I would say so.
It's a class action of one person.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting because there's a different. There's a concept in financial advisory that's class of one.
Yeah,
that's different from the legal class of one, and it's hard for me to shake the legal class of one. It's like, what are you talking about?
Right.
So I had to shake that, but same terminology, but it's a slightly different concept, which I had to learn because I didn't know what the hell they were talking about for a good 10 minutes. So that's that. So we're going to wrap this episode of the Comic Book Bears up. And when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week. In the bear community, if you find a fella attractive, you woof at him. And we do something very similar. We woof at what may be a comic book or a film or a TV program or a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener, or potentially viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
My woof of the week goes out to Mech Cadets on Netflix, and also in comic book form.
Yep.
If you have ever read Mech Cadet U, which was put out by Boom Studios, created by Greg Pak with Takeshi Miyazawa on art duties. Great story, really, really wonderful. And Netflix actually got the rights to put out a series. And so it was all released just a couple weeks ago on Netflix. It's a 10-episode series. They do change some things from the book, so be prepared for the usual changes when they translate from page to screen. But they also, Boom has also just started putting out a new series called Mech Cadets that follows the book series more than anything else. But definitely recommend it if you love the comic. If you haven't read the comic, still check out the series. It's great.
Great. All right, let's go over to Brian. Brian, what is your woof of the week?
Oh man, it's funny is I always remember because it's like riding a bike to some extent.
Yeah.
But no, I wanted to give a plug for my partner Brandon because I don't know, we've talked about it. You may not have, the Florida bullshit that's going on. And he made this amazing sticker, and that's what I was going to pull up, and I haven't had a chance to. But it's this great orange with a Pride Progress flag in it, and it says Florida is for all. I really, he started making these stickers and designs, not because of that, but just as a side thing. And this one sticker, which I don't even have it on a laptop handy, or I'd show that. It's just so perfect. And if you are from Florida, or if you know any Floridians in your life who are staying, because I'll tell you, a lot of them are leaving. Yeah. My ex is just one of my first boyfriend. Actually, he's finally announcing he's moving. His family, his partner, his kid, his mother-in-law, they're all moving out of Florida. So if those of you who are staying, and I have a lot of good friends and family who are still there, this is the sticker for you. If you want to push back, obviously get out, do your civil disobedience or just advocacy, do all of that, but get these stickers, vote, of course, at a minimum. God, I just vote the idiots out. But this little, so Wayward Pansy is the name of his business on TeePublic. If you look at Wayward Pansy on Instagram, you'll find it. I'm not going to show the sticker, like I said, I didn't have it handy, but I'll send it along to Steve. Maybe you can show it on the Facebook page, or we can get it out there, because this sticker is really cool. And I just I've bought 50 of them. I've been giving them out to people, especially from Florida. So that's my geek. That's my my very quick and impromptu Wolf of the Week, because he's earned it.
All right. Let's go over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your Wolf of the Week?
All right. My Wolf of the Week is a Kickstarter book that I received this week. And it is basically high fantasy lesbian cuteness. The book is called Bloom Pretty, Lily of the Valley. So the story, Astria is an outcast touched by magic she has never truly understood, shame haunting every step she takes. Gemma comes from a long line of loving family members full of life and far removed from magic. Somehow the two found each other, and their tale is one of love and family in the midst of tragedy. Unexpected events neither could have imagined shaped the world before them. In this beautiful yet brutal and savage world blossoms a love story. Welcome to Bloom Pretty. This is published by Last Ember Press. It is written by Lisa Fowler, who is the creator and the writer. Carola Boreelli does the pencils and inks. Warnia Sadewa does the colors. Gabrielle Downey does the letters, and Nicola DeAndrea is the editor. So really cool. Like I said, high fantasy lesbian cuteness. So that is my Wolf of the Week.
All right.
Nice.
All right, for my woof of the week, I was disappointed this year because usually when the semi-annual Criterion sale hits, Barnes & Noble also puts some of those other, specialty video labels on sale, like Arrow and Vinegar Syndrome. They didn't do that this year. It was basically just Criterion. But there were still deals to be found, and I've mentioned this resource before on the show, Hamilton Book, and a Blu-ray that I was able to get at 70% off. I had to grab this, the 1980 film Flash Gordon. If you've never seen this, I've always said straight camp only worked once, and that was the Batman series. This is almost straight. There's a lot of queerness in the conception of Flash Gordon. There's deliciously over-the-top performances by Brian Blessed and Max von Sydow. The costumes are amazing. Music score by Queen. And if you've never seen it, it's so hard to describe what this film is like. But Over the Top is about the best I can offer. And this particular version has a lot of special edition content. With things going back to an original like extended trailer to interviews that took place just 2 years ago. So it's put out by Arrow Video. You can get it, as I said, right now for 70% off at Hamilton Book. And there's also some other releases by Arrow. They do really good jobs with the reissues, and it was almost my geek get, but Blue Beetle was, kind of tapping me on the shoulder. So, not necessarily the format, but, just however you see it, at some point in your life, you owe yourself to see the 1980 Flash Gordon. So.
I always felt that movie was like the male version of Barbarella. And
it's the same producer. It's Dino De Laurentiis.
Yeah.
And, some of the
feel, the design,
hysterical about how things were conceived. Some of the stuff on the fly. Initially, it was supposed to be a very different film with Nick Rogue directing it, which would have been a far more serious film. But there are elements that stayed into the final version, and particularly the costumes. I mean, they're just so wild. It's such a colorful film, and you're not going to tax your brain watching it. I can tell you that. It's not a cerebral experience, but it is. Yep, I did too, Dan, as well. I did see it in the theater with my dad as well.
That's awesome.
It was around that time. Yep.
And California.
And it's also they also go through how there was just no merch for it.
Yeah.
King Features just was not up on the licensing. The Mego figures and the Mattel figures that predated it didn't sell for beans, and they just didn't go that route. And it wasn't until later in the 2000s with outlets like Beth Bang Pow and Entertainment Earth that they had actual action figures based on the film. So
and Brian found it thought-provoking.
Okay, you do that. That's very good for you.
I like that for you.
Yeah. All right, Brian, thank you so much for joining us. If we were the Defenders, you're our Silver Surfer. Whenever you're around, it's not very often, but when you're around, you're a full member. And good luck with your next round of travels. And we're just so happy that you could join us tonight.
I appreciate it. I will.
Yeah.
I'm clawing my way back out of the hole that I was in the beginning of the year. And even though I'm going to be gone out of the country for the rest of the fall with breaks, I'm going to get back here before a year is not going to go by or whatever.
Yeah. We hope not.
And tell Brandon if he wants to make me one of those stickers that he additional to the one that you were talking about, but it has a Rainbow Road. He made one with a gator on it, and it says "Proudly Queer and Staying Right Here." If he'll make me one of those with a possum on it instead of a gator, I will rock that. That will go on the back of my car.
Done and done.
Like, I will rock that shit. Like,
done.
Make me one that says "Proudly Queer, Staying Right Here" with a possum.
Yep. Also, Dan Bryan just commented in the chat, shout out to me once again for the Hot Wheels gift. I just want to give you some background on that. I found a Hot Wheels set. There's 5 in the set. They're really nice Hot Wheels at Dollar Tree. And Dan said, "Oh, get me a set," and I did, and he forgot about it apparently, and I sent it to him as a surprise. So Dan, I will accept your X's and O's. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy that. He connected me with a lot of back issues from a friend's collection that Dan
is good people. Dan is really good people
that he was moving at, and unfortunately he was on the he was one of the individuals at Heroes Con that I only saw briefly because of my abbreviated appearance there because of the friggin' gout. So next time, lots of hugs. Damn you, gout! And now I'm on allopurinol like an old man.
I need to get on that. The last time I had gout, it was a bitch. I'm not gonna lie, it's terrible.
Oh, it's terrible.
And reply, much love to all my bears. Thank you so much. Dan.
Much love back. All right, so we're wrapping this up. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram and the Threads. Not yet the Blue Sky. That's just for people, but I'm there. If you guys want, I have invites now, so I can.
Oh yeah, throw one at me. I don't have one yet.
Whatever.
Does it have the porn? Is it
no,
that yet?
No, it's a like I believe it's promoted as a nicer version of Twitter.
Oh, that's
yeah. Or X.
Threads is just where I post my
I'm sorry,
my paragraph reviews of things.
Twitter is the one instance I can get behind dead naming.
Yes,
Twitter.
Yes, I got you.
That's the one instance I can get behind. And I also wanted to say, in doing my Blue Beetle research, I just wanted to give props to DC Comics because in all of the materials, there's a couple of creators that this affects, and I think Marvel's got to get on the ball with this a little bit. All of Lila Sturgis's work that was previously credited to Matt Sturgis is now credited to Lila Sturgis on the digital platforms, and there's 1 or 2 other trans creators where that's also the case. So it's just good to see, that came up with the Blue Beetle stuff, and it's really nice to see that.
Yeah.
That they're moving so quickly in that direction. So props to DC Comics on that. And Marvel, you're a little bit behind, but it'll get there, I'm sure. So Twitter and the Tumblr and Instagram and the Threads as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to write to us too, you can do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. If you want to listen to us, you can do so through Apple Podcasts.
Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, I couldn't think of it. And sadly, Stitcher Radio is going the way of the dodo at the end of the month. We've out of the audiences, Stitcher is one of our biggest audiences, so we need to go directly to some podcasting platforms that we're not on. So that's forthcoming. We each have assignments. We'll take care of that.
Which, yeah, if by the way, if you listen to our podcast on another, or if you listen to podcasts on other services that we're not on, which ones do you listen to?
Yeah.
That way we know, because we want to get our platform on there, right? So especially with Stitcher going out. So if you listen to something that would be more convenient for us to hear us on, let us know so we can make that jump.
And that's something that me as Grand Poobah, I've been very lax with, because there's so many podcatchers out there. And I was popping, we were popping up on Podbean. I never had a direct feed to Podbean. So I got lazy, but there's platforms we need to get on, and we'll naturally be announcing that on the show. Until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz with hiccups.
I'm Steve Morey.
I'll wait.
Oh, I'm Caleb Alexander. I don't know. I thought Brian always goes before I do. I'm Caleb Alexander.
I know. That was like,
it's okay. I've been demoted. I'm Bryan Pittard.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie again.
Oh, you did the whole thing. Oh, shit. No, I meant...
Oh, God,
Do it again. No, I'm just kidding.
All
I
right.
want to-
Until
awkward.
next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
And I'm Bryan Pittard.
You're going to hear a woof and an explosion. If you're listening to the audio version, we'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Woof.